golfchampionship.com.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 24 minutes before 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Friday morning. Years before I was working in radio at all, I had a job for 7 years. I worked for the Juvenile Detention Center here in Marion County, and I have mentioned it before on this show that I did that in my past. And I want to tell you something that'll connect with what we're going to talk about right now. I remember kids coming in. When I say kids, these are juveniles, so they could be 17 and 363 days. You know, as long as they were under 18, they were still juveniles, and so they would be coming in to be processed because they had been arrested, and there was a typical way that it all happened. There was a typical reaction, and I want to tell you about one that was not typical. A young man came in to be arrested. And he was sitting in the little area waiting for me to do the paperwork and asking him all the questions. And there was a man at the door, and the door was a electronically opened, very, very thick door. And he told me through the glass that he was the father. And he can I speak to my son? He's in there. So I let him in. And the father came in, and he looked at his son, and he said, "What happened?" And they were talking. The father got on his knees and prayed to God for his son. Now, whether you're religious or not, that's not my point. My point is what I witnessed was pure love from his father. Because that was what the father believed he needed to do at that point was to pray. Absolutely. The father showed up. First of all, that wasn't even common. One of the jobs I did was there was like a house arrest program in our county, and I used to go to the homes and to be sure that the kids were home. And you could tell that the kids who were in a loving environment were the ones probably less likely to fall back and do more crime. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I ever figured anything out. That was just my observation. And Dr. Simon I. Singer is on the phone. I can't wait to hear what he has to say. He has studied this way more than I have. He's a noted criminologist. He's a professor at Northeastern University's School of Criminology and Criminal Justice. He has received the Albert J. Rice Distinguished Scholar Award. He's a juvenile justice researcher and an award-winning author. And his book that we're going to talk about right now is titled America's Safest City, which I have a cheat sheet here that says it's Amherst, New York. Delinquency and Modernity. Is that how you say that word? In Suburbia. New Perspectives in Crime, Deviance, and Law. Dr. Simon Singer. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning. I'm delighted to be here.
What a great... I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Where are you right now? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Boston, Massachusetts.
Boston.
Cold up there. What's the temperature down there?
It is 40 right now. I'd like to tell you it was 80, but it's not. It's 40. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to.
So
anyway, I appreciated hearing your story. I think there are a few other stories like that I have in my book, in my over 300 pages. There's some stories, qualitative stories. And then there's some statistics that I save for the end, which would validate a lot of what you experienced in your former employment.
My little story is probably just an armchair quarterback's observation, I guess, is the best way to say that. Because even though I worked there 7 years, I wasn't studying it the way you have. But I'm also a dad. And I remember thinking I'm spoiled as a dad because my son doesn't do any of those bad things. Robin is a mom. Robin and her husband raised two children who are, my son and their two children are all three adults. But it was love, I think, that was the common denominator. How is it possible that one city seems to have gotten this right? It seems like individual families might get it right, but and you know what? I'm guessing that you're going to tell us that some people have loving families and they still break the law.
Yeah, they not only have loving families and still break the law, but they also have loving communities. And those communities tend to have a lot more services than unloving communities. And those services help. You know, good middle-class families want to live in good communities with good schools, good public schools, plenty of youth services, plenty of churches and other community activities. And that all I found to make a difference in terms of why some cities are safer than other cities. Another point to bear in mind is that adolescence is a very difficult period of time. It's a period of transition. Yeah. Kids have a lot to get together. It's more difficult, I would say, today. There's a lot more expected of kids today than, say, 100 years ago. And that's the modernity part of the subtitle, delinquency and modernity in suburban.
Okay. Well, you know what you're kind of hitting on is I've often wondered if part of the problem isn't that we just don't have enough work. Like back in 100 years ago, you had to milk the cows, you had to clean the barn, and now you got to straighten up your room and then you can play video games again.
Absolutely. Not only don't we have enough work for the kids, but the work that we do have is very complicated. So instead of milking the cows, learn your algebra and your calculus so you can program the computer. But you got to sit with those books, and suppose the books are a bit boring, and I'm over my head with the books, and I need a little release, and I see what you're doing in terms of release by, having a drink once in a while, but I can't drink, and I'm 16, 17. Well, we're finding a lot of kids are doing things that are technically illegal, and that falls into the category of delinquency. And that's why we have a juvenile justice system. But some juvenile justice systems, as I'm sure you were one of the more kinder officials, some juvenile justice systems are really better than others.
Do you think that the U.S. government is at fault here, though, for some of the undermining of what the students want to accomplish? Because my two children and Larry's son graduated with high honors from high school, and the U.S. government puts out these reports that the students in America aren't performing as well as the students in China or in Europe, and we're behind, and boys grasp it better than girls, and girls need to be updated in the chemistry and math field. Do you think the U.S. government is doing a disservice to our young people by putting out those kinds of reports? Because you've got young people excelling all the time here, and they're never given any accolades by the government.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of pressure on kids these days, and not all kids can match up to what is expected. In terms of the U.S. government trying to standardize policies such as No Child Left Behind, that's a risky business. Now, education is quite critical. All the kids that we surveyed in Amherst over extended periods of times, delinquents and non-delinquents, they all recognized that school was important. But a segment of those kids had a lot of trouble getting there and finding acceptance in the school. And that's where adults, competent adults, are absolutely critical. So, you're lucky to be able to provide that competency to your kids. It shows.
I'm so looking forward to it. I feel like we've been picking your brain, but we need to be fair to the book. So let's take a little break, and when we come back, we'll focus on what's in the book, titled America's Safest City, and hear more from Dr. Simon Isinger. This is a very fascinating topic. I kind of feel like we're never going to have enough time with this particular one. So we'll take a little break, and we'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. For today, times of clouds and sun and breezy with a brief shower in spots. Highs will range from the low 50s in the northernmost part of the zone to the mid-60s in the south. And partly cloudy tonight with a low in the upper 30s across the northern interior part of the zone to the mid-50s along the south coast. For tomorrow, times of clouds and sun. There may be a shower in spots along the coast. Highs ranging from near 60 in the north to the low 70s in the south. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
This weather brought to you by Florida Thoroughbred Breeders and Owners Association, FTBOA.
Did you know that thoroughbred horses annually contribute $1 billion to the Sunshine State's economy and employ over 12,000 people, more than even baseball spring training? To learn more about the horse capital of the world or to join the membership of the FTBOA, the Florida Thoroughbred Breeders and Owners Association, please check out ftboa.com.
All right, 12 minutes before 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Dr. Simon Isinger is on the phone up in freezing cold Boston. just rubbing it in a little bit.
Yeah.
He has written a book called America's Safest City. We're talking about juvenile delinquency specifically. If you're wondering which is the safest city, it's Amherst, New York, outside of Buffalo. And Dr. Simon is a criminologist, a professor, and has received numerous awards, including one as being an author. So, Doctor, I wanted to ask you this. When I worked at the detention center, I felt like a failure. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I worked with so many kids, and I thought when I first took the job, my whole thing was, man, I'm going to take kids and I'm going to show them the light, and they're never going to have a life of crime, and I'm just going to be one after another straightening kids out. The truth is, I felt like I didn't straighten anybody out. I did have my mind changed after I was no longer working there. A young man pulled me over. He was driving a truck. I didn't know who he was, but he flashed his lights at me and asked me to pull over, and I did. He got out of his truck, and I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "You don't recognize me?" And I said, "No." He said, "You got me on the right path. That's why I'm pulling you over to thank you." I couldn't believe it. It was a beautiful moment, and he had a job working at a place that puts tires on cars, etc. I mean, he didn't have a big job, but he had a job, and he felt like he wanted to thank me for putting him on that track. I had no clue that I made a difference in his life. I thought for sure that I hadn't. I quit because I thought I'm not doing anything here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I just thought I'd share that with you. You never know. We never know how we affect people, even if it isn't till a year or two later. You
Yeah. Well, the modernity part here, we can't take for granted juvenile justice and some of the professionals, such as yourself, working in the system, making a difference. The objectives are clear as they were announced over 100 years ago by the founders of the juvenile court, to give kids another chance, to avoid, not to deny punishment, but also to recognize the need not to disfigure these kids, not to stigmatize the kids with a criminal record, not to say that they should go to hell forever, not to criminalize their delinquency, but to recognize, you did a bad thing. You gotta face the music. You gotta face the punishment. And might be in this detention facility. It might be on probation. It might be in community treatment. And then we're going to give you another chance. We're going to give you a chance to be a plumber, to drive that truck, and maybe you'll pull one of us over and thank us as you experienced in your personal experience. So treatment is not dead, as we all know.
In our school system here in Marion County, we have criminal justice classes and a program that that gives students a heads up for if they want to go into any aspect of law enforcement. And I think that really helps because sometimes they will recognize something in their friends because of the classes and chat with them and might keep them from going on that path.
Sure. And many police officers, correctional officers, people in the system have learned from family members who've made mistakes and have learned that you can make a difference in helping people out to avoid chronic and even more serious acts of crime.
By the way, I'd like to admit to you, and probably admit for the first time to anybody, that I had a bit of a racist notion before I actually took the job. When I read the job description, I imagined myself going into a facility where all the kids were black. I had this very, very racist idea of who the juvenile delinquents were. The truth is, in this facility in Ocala, most of them were white.
Yeah.
And when I'm not saying anything, I'm anti-racist or racist reversed or anything like that. I'm just trying to point out that I had this total misconception of who was breaking the law, and who was being incarcerated for it. What is in the book? We need to be fair to the book. America's Safest City is what it's called. Who did you write it for?
Well, I wrote it for therapists, professionals, scholars, and also for parents, middle-class parents.
Yeah.
And I also wrote it for policymakers. Too often we're looking at inner-city crime, inner-city violence in minority communities without recognizing that there's a lot of trouble in suburbia, in safe cities. And by the way, the title, America's Safest City, comes from Money Magazine's list of safest cities. And in 1996, Amherst, New York, where I happen to live, which is an affluent suburb right outside of Buffalo, where the University of Buffalo is located, it was named America's Safest City, and based on UCR index crimes, which is those violent property crimes that we all consider quite serious. But there's, as we know from self-report studies, and as we know if we reflect on our own youth, that there's a lot of petty crime that doesn't often make it into the official statistics or official arrests. Occasionally, as you noted, sometimes a middle-class kid, a white kid, it's not all minorities. Sometimes there's serious trouble for a variety of reasons, including family, including all sorts of tragedies, disabilities of some sort. Occasionally, we all know of so-called good kids who all of a sudden have committed something very, very serious. And I put good around, in quotes, because there's some underlying trouble that leads to that behavior. So I tell some stories in the book, and all the stories are really grounded in a lot of facts. One is the story of David O., who comes from, wasn't Amherst, New York, but it could have easily been another safe city, and an affluent suburb from a middle-class family, but deeply troubled. And, he was, at the age of 15, convicted of murder. of murdering a next-door neighbor. So I tell that story, but I also tell some good stories, including the story of Barack Obama and Bill Gates, and how they related their troubled childhoods in their memoirs.
Right? We have the phone ringing, so if you don't mind taking a call, I'll connect a few of our callers to you. And we have to be quick, though. Again, Dr. Simon I. Singer is our guest, and he's the author of the book America's Safest City. Good morning. Thank you for waiting. You're on the air.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you, Robin. I hope you're feeling better, Robin. Dr. Singer, I'm a former city of Miami policeman, and it's been a couple decades ago, but I do still care about my society, and some of the things you just described applied to my own personal life, which led me in the direction to, and also being able to work and go to school was one reason I chose to be a policeman in Miami. But I wonder if Dr. Singer could please comment on the resurgence of heroin in your upper middle class neighborhoods in some parts of the country, Atlanta, Chicago, where wealthy families are having a problem with that. Is there a connection, in his opinion, to the also the crime and futility in the Rust Belt of the United States, to include all the way from his part of New York, through Ohio to St. Louis and even the Ferguson, and the loss of 42,000 factories in America? Is there a connection, in his opinion? There is in mine. If the doctor would please comment on the loss of our middle class and the connection to crime. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
good questions.
Those are very good questions. I don't think we have the several hours that it would take me to answer them, but I'll try to be brief. In our surveys, in our interviews, we have the story of Luke, who another Amherst youth who did get involved in heroin. Comes from a good middle-class family, again, a good community, good schools. It's very important to recognize that in every community there are very deeply troubled kids, and that they need considerable amounts of help. And the parents cannot be expected to do it on their own, that they need the help of not only school officials, but professional therapists, and at times they may need to be out of their home environment. They may need a more secure setting. They may need a good rehab center. That was the story I tell of Luke, that he finally, thanks to the support of his parents and the community, that they weren't quick to criminalize his behavior and give him a life sentence or send him to criminal court, that he had a number of chances, and although he screwed up on many of those chances, finally, as a young adult, he was able to get it together. Addiction is a very serious problem, and there are multiple reasons for why people are addicted to drugs, alcohol, and it would take an enormous amount of time to go through that list.
Doctor, thank you for being on. We've got 1 minute to get the information out so people can get the book. It's called America's Safest City. Do you have a website?
Actually, if they go to the Northeastern website, they'll see it under the college of the NYU website would have it.
Okay, nyupress.org. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is it on Amazon, etc.?
It's definitely on Amazon.
Well, thank you for writing the book. I'm anxious to read it myself, and we just didn't have enough time to fit in everything we wanted to talk to you about, so I'll have to read the book. Thank you, Doctor, for being on the air with us today. Stay warm and come to Florida sometime. It's usually warmer here, usually.
Hey, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Great interview. All right, we will take a little break. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.